I've been building apps every day with Lovable for the past month. We're talking over 200 hours and it's been going great. But then I added n8n to the mix and it blew my mind. This tech stack actually works so well, it helped me place in the top 100 of this hackathon competition last weekend. They're announcing the winner today. Who knows, we might even win. In this video, I'm gonna show you why n8n plus Lovable is overpowered. We're gonna build an app front to back and it's gonna take us like 20 minutes. But more important than that, I'm gonna show you how I would use this overpowered combo to actually make money. Let's get started. Today, we're gonna build a personal finance app with Lovable that shows all your expenses, but that's not the impressive part. We're going to use n8n to set up an AI agent on the back end that's going to be able to act as our financial advisor. We'll be able to ask questions about our expenses and receive insights from our AI agent. This is just a simple example. We all have expenses, but there is one thing that you and I like way more than spending money, and that's making money. So I'm gonna tie what we build today to a simple framework that allows tools like Google and ChatGPT to make billions. And I'll teach you how you can leverage Lovable and n8n to piggyback off their solutions so you can make your own apps. If you understand what I'm about to show you, you can go out there and start solving real problems with software. I'll tell you a little secret. People are happy to pay you money if you solve their problems. Here's the framework. All software is actually built on an input-output system. So what do we mean by that? Let's take a simple example that everybody will understand. If we go to Google, we can input healthy food to the search bar, and what Google will do, what the software will do, is output a list of relevant links. So it could be links to websites that talk about healthy food, might be websites that sell healthy food. It could be a little bit of anything, whatever Google thinks is relevant to your search term, healthy food, Google will output for you. The next level of this would be a ChatGPT or an LLM model, where we input a text which would be create a diet plan for muscle growth. And what ChatGPT will do, it's going to output a custom meal plan tailored to you, which is basically a bunch of text. It's going to tell you how much protein you need to eat per day and so on. All software is built on an input-output system. Now here's the kicker. Showing input and output is actually quite simple. For a developer nowadays, building something that looks like this, what ChatGPT shows on the screen, is fairly simple. Like, beginner programmers can do this. Same with the output. They can show this data on the screen to the user. Quite simple. What actually is impressive is what's going on here in between. The transformation of the data from an input to an output. This is actually the valuable part of any software. This is really where companies like Google, OpenAI, which is ChatGPT, this is where they really set themselves apart from your run-of-the-mill software. So what does this have to do with us? What does this have to do with Lovable and tools like n8n? Well, now we can actually leverage Lovable to build the part of the software that shows the input and helps us create the input that we send through our transformation here, but it also helps us show and structure up the output of the software. So in the case of Google, if you wanted to build the Google page where you have a search bar and then you want to build the Google page that shows the actual results, we could use something like Lovable to build that in, I'm not kidding, 2-3 minutes. And the transformation, the super valuable part of the software that transforms the input to the output, we can build that with tools like n8n. And I'm going to show you exactly how, but you might be thinking, it's impossible for me to build something that works as well as ChatGPT or Google for that matter. Well, you're probably right, but we don't have to. And here's why. n8n actually allows us to use the information from ChatGPT. We can leverage the AI capabilities of a software like ChatGPT, and we can use that inside of our app without our users ever knowing that they're interacting with ChatGPT directly. And I can promise you, there are tons of apps that you use today that do this without you even knowing. I'm going to show you how you can use Lovable and n8n to build your own AI-powered software that can do pretty much anything a ChatGPT model actually can do by itself. If you understand this, how systems input and output data and how to transform that in between, you will make money. I can promise you that. What I'm going to do for you today is actually show you how to build one of these systems using Lovable and n8n from scratch. Let's get started. All right, so let's start by looking at what we want to build with our different components here. We're going to be using Lovable for our input, n8n and ChatGPT for the brain, the black box of our application, and again, Lovable for the output. So to jump back over to our framework that we looked at the beginning, we're gonna have Lovable for input. That's where we're gonna build our nice design that users can see their finance expenses, but also have a little chat window to write with our AI. The black box here is gonna be n8n and ChatGPT. And then the output part of our application is going to be, again, Lovable, where we display the messages that n8n and ChatGPT are creating for us. So the data is going to flow from Lovable to n8n to ChatGPT to n8n and then back out to Lovable. Let's get started by building our brain of the application, or at least the entry point of our brain. So we're jumping over to n8n. And if you don't have an n8n account, I'll drop a link to where you can create one in the description so you can get started right away. We're going to create something that's called a workflow. A workflow is basically a way that we want data to be moved around in our software. And we actually need to tell n8n what's the first step. How does this flow start? So we click on the plus icon and we're going to say the actual first thing that's going to happen is something called a webhook is going to be fired, or we're actually going to be listening to our Lovable application to send information to our webhook. So Lovable is going to be sending information to our n8n webhook. And we're setting up this webhook right now, which is basically what we programmers call a listener. So somebody that's just, their entire job is just to listen and see if your application says anything. We're going to change this to a post request because we actually want to send information alongside this message. So Lovable is going to send a user message like, how much do I spend on meals per week or per month? And that information is going to be sent. Here we get the actual address where we send the message to. And you can think of this address as your home address or the address of your work. It's an actual place on the internet where we send information to. If we close down the canvas, you can see we have our first webhook set up, and now we can actually start building the front end of our application so that we can send information to this webhook. So let's get started on that. We're going to build this really neat finance app that shows a nice graph displaying how much you spend per month and also every single transaction that you've made. But we're also going to have a chat window so you can talk to this application and get insights, intelligible insights on your spendings. I'm going to actually use this Figma design. I haven't created it. Somebody way more talented than me has. I'm going to use it and feed it to Lovable to give Lovable extra context on what I want my application to look like. I think this looks amazing, and I'd like Lovable to make my app look as close to it as possible. So we're going to export that image. You're going to find this image in the description down below, along with the prompt that we're going to use to feed Lovable. So I'm jumping over to ChatGPT, and here I've constructed a prompt that we actually are going to give to Lovable, but I'm creating the prompt in ChatGPT. The reason why I do this is because ChatGPT is really good at helping me create instructions that I'm going to send to another AI. So I kind of use it to refine my prompt before sending it off to Lovable. The one thing you have to edit in this prompt is the webhook that we send the message to. But we're going to get to that. I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's start from the beginning here. So the app overview, build a financial app with two main views. So two main views. First view, expenses overview. Display the user's monthly spendings and detailed transactions. This is what we're seeing on the screen right now. So this beautiful chart and monthly transactions. This is going to be the first view. The second view, the second page, will be this like AI chat assistant. The purpose is to create a chat interface that the user can ask questions like, how much did I spend on food last month? Which category increased the most? What's my average monthly spending, and so on. And we want to post these messages to the endpoint that we just created on n8n. When the user types in information to our app, we actually want to send that over to n8n, and we want n8n to use an AI agent to do a couple different things with the message. We're also providing what we call mock data. What do I mean by this? In a real application, we'd hook the user's app up with their bank account, so they actually had their real expenses in the application. This is just a test app. I'm not going to use my real transactions. I'm just using fake data, mock data. And the data is, we have the date of the transaction, we have the category of transactions, so groceries, food, transport, and so on. We have the amount, timestamp or currency. This can be dollars. In Sweden, we have kronor. If you're in Asia, Indian, wherever, you'd probably have a different currency. You can set that up however you want. We copy this, we head over to lovable.dev. If you don't have a Lovable account yet, I've included a link in the description below so you can get started right away. We're pasting the entire prompt straight into Lovable. There we go. And we're also, don't forget to attach the image that we want Lovable to base this application off of. And before you hit enter, don't forget you need to update the webhook endpoint that you're sending the data to. And you get that from your n8n webhook and this post endpoint right there. So copy paste that one right into here. Boom. Then we hit enter and Lovable is going to start creating our amazing app for us. And if this is the first time you're creating an app with Lovable, get prepared to be an absolutely mind-boggling experience the first time. It's coding an entire app for us from scratch. It's doing this with React, but it's also using great CSS libraries like Tailwind to build very, very neat and good-looking software right out the gate. It's coding everything for us from scratch. Now this can take anywhere between like 30 seconds to 3-4 minutes, depending on how big the app is. So while that's running, let's again just remind ourselves what we're actually building right now. We have a front-end application called Lovable, which is going to be our input. And from this application, we want to be able to ask questions like, how much do I spend per category? So how much money am I spending per category of expenses, food, gifts, and so on? We want this message to be sent to n8n so that n8n can then ask ChatGPT, based on our data set of expenses, how much are we actually spending per category? ChatGPT uses its AI capabilities and it reads through the data set. It's going to feed that answer back to n8n. And then we're actually going to be able to respond to our Lovable application with a message. And this is going to be, you're spending X on gifts, Y on foods, and you're doing it over these time periods and so on. This way we can actually talk to our data set, our app, with this AI agent, and it's going to provide us with insights on our expenses. Right, so Lovable spun our app up for us. Let's open it up in a new window. We have this really good looking line chart that shows the expenses each month and then all the transactions here below. I really like that it's this wide. I think it's going to look much better on a phone. Let's do that. This looks great. So we have our graph here with all our expenses, and then we have the transactions for each expense. What I'm more interested in is this AI assistant. So here, if I ask questions like, how much do I spend per category? Lovable won't really be able to give me any type of insights here because it doesn't use an AI model to understand my data set or anything. So right now, if we're looking at flowchart of data here, Lovable isn't connected to anything. We haven't made this connection yet. So now what we're going to do is test so that we're actually sending data to n8n. We set up this webhook, and then we want to connect n8n to ChatGPT. That's going to be the first step. The second step is going to be sending this information that ChatGPT provides us with back over to our Lovable app. So we're going to go over to n8n, and in our webhook here, we can actually tell it to start listening to any events that are fired from our application. So if I ask again, we could say something like, how much do I spend per category? What we want to see, we don't really care what's happening right here. What we want to see is n8n actually receiving this data. And we want to see a message down here in the body that is the actual message that we sent from our application. How much do I spend per category? We see that n8n is actually receiving that, and it's receiving it from our application. And this is where things get really, really interesting, because now we're able to input data into a black box here, which allows us to use basically whatever we want. We could use, oh, that's way too thick. We could use BT, we could use different software. We could add like Gmail. Oh, when people write with the mouse, they make it look so easy. It's not easy. We could use AI, we could use Gmail. We can hit up a bunch of different type of predefined softwares, and we can leverage those in our own applications by sending an input and creating output, but allowing all these super advanced tools to do the heavy lifting for us. The next step would be to actually make sure n8n is attached to an AI model. So for this, we're going to exit out of our webhook. We're done with that for now. Actually, you know what? I forgot. We're pinning the data. This is very important. This allows us to use this data when we're testing the entire workflow of our n8n app. So we're pressing the plus button here, and we're going to add our AI agent to this workflow. We're going to say advanced AI agent. And on the left side, you're going to actually see the inputs. And on the right side, you're actually going to see our outputs, just like we've been modeling it here in our framework. We have our inputs, we have our outputs. Right now, we're actually defining what's happening here in the middle. So I want you to select here, source for prompts. We're going to go define below, and you're going to take the message that's sent here from the body. So you're going to drag that message right in here, and that's going to tell n8n when it receives its input. We don't care about all these things up here. You can just close those headers down. We don't care about any of that. We just want to look at the body and the message. This is what we're looking for. Okay, so we drag that into the prompt. We now have our message firmly planted or based here in n8n. We're getting ready to send it over to ChatGPT. But before we do that, you actually have to provide ChatGPT with some context. You can't just open up ChatGPT and say, how much do I spend per category? It's going to have no idea what you're talking about. What you do need to do is give ChatGPT some context. So we're going to say, here's my data set, and we're going to point it to the mock data that we used earlier here. So we're going to give it all of this data. So here's my data set. That's the context. Whoops, here we go. And then we're going to say, let's see, answer the user's question based on the messages you receive. And we can also say, provide finance insights. That's all we need to do. We can refine this over time if we want to. But let's head over to n8n. We're going to go to options, system message. We're going to say context. Okay, we can remove that. Answer the questions based on the message you receive. That would be this message, provide finance insight. Okay, now the last thing is base your insights on this data set. And I need you to copy and paste this data set into the prompt. So we're going to go on the new row. We're just pasting that straight in. Perfect. That's all we need to do. We don't get to test this step just yet. We can close that down and you're going to see, no, it's like showing us some type of error. Don't get scared. All it's saying is we actually haven't connected it to an LLM. We haven't connected it to an AI yet. So we need to actually make this connection happen right now. We're going to hit the chat model there. I'm using OpenAI. You can use whatever you want. You can use Claude, which is Anthropic. You can use DeepSeek, like whatever you want. I'm going to use OpenAI. It doesn't matter for this app. What does matter, however, is your API keys. You do need to set up new credentials when you're using OpenAI or any other type of LLM model if you want to make requests to their API. And this might actually cost you a little bit of money. You can use free credits. Different models have some free credits. The good news is this. If you spend $5 on OpenAI, you'll get basically, for testing purposes on your own, you're going to get unlimited amounts of tries. So $5, unlimited amounts of tries. I've added $5, and now we're going to set up my API keys. So it asks for an API key. Let's go ahead and provide that. We're jumping over to platform.openai.com/settings API keys. I can add this in the description down below. We're going to press generate new secret. I'm going to say finance app 2. Project's going to be default, create secret key. Now, don't ever share your secret key with anybody. Don't show it on the screen like I'm doing right now. This is basically your password to your, in this case, OpenAI account. Don't share this. This is supposed to be super secret. So make sure it is super secret. Paste that in as an API key right here and press save. Connection tested successfully. Perfect. We can shut that down. We're going to use the ChatGPT 4 model. I'm not really too worried. We could try to find the perfect model for this application. Doesn't matter too much for me right now. We're going to back that one down. And now we actually have our AI agent set up with our chat model. The last thing we want to do is make sure that when this message is being sent into n8n and then to ChatGPT and back to n8n, we want n8n to actually relay this message over to Lovable. So our Lovable app is sitting over response, and right now we get a generic response. We want an actual intelligible response from an AI. So we actually need to replace this with something that actually comes from OpenAI. We're setting that last piece of the puzzle. We're going to actually install that right now. So after our AI agent, we're going to press the plus button. We're going to go ahead and type in webhook, but instead of the same webhook as before, we're going to say respond to webhook. And what this means is you could visualize the flow of data, something like this, but you could also visualize it like this. Our Lovable app makes a input request to n8n. We do some magic things here, and then n8n responds back to the exact same place as it did before. So that's why n8n has structured it this way. It says respond to webhook, because we're listening here, and then we're responding back to the same place that we actually sent the first request to. So open that up. First income items, fine. We're going to test this in just a second. So that's set up. We need to go to our initial webhook. And on the response here, you're going to see using respond to webhook node. That's what we just set up. So respond to webhook, perfect. That would be this part right here. So when we get a request to this endpoint, we're going to respond with that request on the same place, which will be this endpoint. And that allows our app to listen and get a response back in the same place. So let's test this out. We have a message. How do I spend how much do I spend per category? Let's go over to the AI agent. We're going to test this step. It's going to receive the message, which is how much do I spend per category? We're waiting for ChatGPT to actually try this out. Hopefully we go. Okay. And it actually gives us a pretty cool output. It says, let's break down your expenses per category based on the provided data. Perfect. Now we want to see if the webhook actually can take that information and send it back, which it did, no problem. So everything on the n8n side of our application, all of this seems to be working. Let's see if the flow of data through our Lovable app and this, super brain of compute power, let's see if the entire flow of data is working. For that to actually happen, we're going to exit out here, and then we're going to test the entire workflow. But before we do that, make sure you unpin the data. Don't want that data there anymore. We're going to test the workflow. That means we're waiting on a trigger. Perfect. We're going to head over to our application, and I recommend you do a hard reset here. So spin up the app again, go to the network tab. This is going to allow you to see every single request that you're sending away from your application. Very good for debugging purposes. We're going to say, how much do I spend per category? I'm going to hit the enter button. We see that we're sending away data. Seems that we're waiting for some type of response. What's happening over here on n8n? Okay, it's receiving the data. It's loading. So our AI model's actually doing something. It sends the response back. Oh, and we get some type of error. I was so hoping that was going to work on the first try. So sorry, I couldn't process that request. Okay, let's see what's not really working here. To analyze your spending category based on provided data, I will sum up. Okay, it actually is. Okay, this is interesting. We're actually getting a great response here from our API, but Lovable isn't using that response and showing it on the screen. It's showing something else here. So that means we have some form of miscommunication on our Lovable application, but our n8n application is actually working just fine. So we're going to have to do some debugging with the Lovable program. Let's get into that. So I'm going to take this response. I'm going to head over to our Lovable prompt here, and I'm going to say that I'm not really getting the type of response, or the chat isn't working the way I want it to. Like I expected, the API request is responding with good data. There is no error there. And what I mean by that is I can tell that our webhook, which is an API call, it's responding with great data here. This is exactly what we want to see. It's summing up our total expenditure, and we're getting that. We're expecting this to be shown here in the chat screen, but instead we're getting met by this type of message. So I'm trying to explain to Lovable what's not working, but I'm also trying to fill it in with what I think is working, so Lovable can kind of zero in on where it should start solving the problem. The chat is not working like I expected. I'm getting this message, and I'll send the message that it generates. So I'm sorry I couldn't process that request. The API request is responding with good data. There's no error there. I'm wondering why you're not showing the data from the API request. So let's see what Lovable does with that. I'm going to be honest here. Lovable's amazing, n8n's amazing. When it comes to debugging, you do need like a little bit of programming understanding. You do need to know how to code a little bit. You do need to know a little bit how API works and so on. Otherwise, as soon as we start looking at the code, if you don't know where the issue might be, things can kind of get pretty tricky. So if you do have a little bit of programming experience, you are, just golden right now with these type of opportunities, these type of tools that allow you to leverage technology like webhooks, LLMs, and so on. Let's see what Lovable says. It says it's fixed the message with the chat interface. I'm going to check what it has coded for us. So here, what I can tell is we're making our request to our webhook. That seems to be working. It's parsing that request here and storing it in something it calls data. And then here would be that message that I didn't quite want to see. And that's because it's trying to create a message off of a property called data.message. And if this isn't exactly where the data is stored, we're going to start getting some errors. So this allows me to tell our lovable application, I might want to do some debugging right around here. We're going to test the application. It might still work, but if it doesn't, I know this is where I'm going to start debugging the code. So let's go over to n8n. We're going to test the workflow. We're going to open up a new lovable app right there. We're going to head over to the assistant, always inspecting, always looking at the network tab to see the API calls to the webhook. We're going to say, how much do I spend per category? Network request is being sent. It's pending. That's perfect. We're listening to the data. n8n seems to be working, seems to be doing what it's supposed to be doing. Let's see. Okay, same error again, but I do still get the correct data. So the format looks like this. We have an object. This is an object. And inside of that, we have something called output. And this tells me that when Lovable is trying to look at the data, but it's looking for a message or a text, it's never looking for this output. This is called a property. It's not looking for the output. So that's what we're going to tell Lovable. We're going to say the message looks like this. The response will look like this. Okay. Actually, I don't need to confuse it with this huge piece of information. I just can use something like this message here. So the response will look like this. It's going to be an object. It's going to contain a property of output, and the message would go there. That means when you get a response from the API call, look for an output prop, which is short for property, on the data from the API call. Let's try that. This should update so that instead of looking for a response or for a message or for text, it should now understand, okay, I should be looking for an output here instead. This should go pretty fast when it fixes up, right? Seems to be, if I freeze right there, it's looking for data.output. This should be perfect. Hoping this works. Let's see what happens. Okay, it seems to have updated. We're going to run our test here again. So test workflow. I'm going to open a new chat window, doing the same thing again. We're inspecting, always the network tab. We're going over to the AI assistant. How much do I spend per category? So network request being sent, perfect. And it ends doing its magic. We're still waiting for the response. Something seems to have gone wrong now, and I can't really figure out why. Let's see. How much do I spend per category? Requests being sent away. Let's see what it responds with. Seems like n8n's doing its thing. Catch the request there. It's working on the message. It's sending our message. Perfect. And finally, after some debugging, we actually get a intelligible response from n8n and ChatGPT AI model or agent, whatever you would want to call it. We now are able to ask our app and it will respond with different types of summaries of our data. So let's go ahead and try something again. Let's say, how much do I spend on food? It gave me an error, no problem. That's because I'm not, my workflow isn't running. Since we're testing, we haven't gone into production. We actually have to always test the workflow. I can type in the same message again. How much do I spend on food? You're going to see that the model starts to run. Perfect. That went really fast. To calculate your total spending on food based on your provided data, we can run a sum, the amount, blah, 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 blah. And it says about $100 on food. You could do a bunch of things with this. You could format this so it looks so much better than just text. You can actually tell Lovable how it should structure this data up. If you've managed to get this far, I want you to pat yourself on the back because you've actually managed to build something that is, let's just say there's a lot of potential if you're able to do something like this. Because what we've accomplished is we've built a front-end application that can send input, text, in this case, and we've sent it to this black box, this AI agent that has basically unlimited capabilities. And then we've managed to get that AI agent to respond back to our front-end application, Lovable in this case, and display the message. What this means is whatever you want to do in here with an AI agent, if it is to provide insights on financial expenses, you can do that, but you could also do something else, like you could send your application, you could send, it could take your CV, your, I think you call it a cover letter in the US. Basically, when you're searching for jobs, you could send that into your software, and this black box, this AI agent could basically hook up to ChatGPT. It could check if the cover letter looks good, but it could also hook up to LinkedIn. It could hook up to a database with a bunch of recruiters' emails, and it can hook up to your Gmail, and it can send your cover letter to every single recruiter in, you know, some area or whatever. That would be one way to use it. And you could also use it for a bunch of different things. Here's the cool thing about the app, or here's the cool thing about the framework. You're using Lovable to build front ends, and you're doing this super fast. You send the information from Lovable will be the input you send n8n, and from here you can use an AI agent. You can connect whatever tools, whatever models you want, and make something magical happen here in the middle, and you can send that information back out as output to your Lovable application. And again, we've built this in minutes, and it looks absolutely stunning.